I'm Mr. Rosansky, and this is a speed run of Practice Test 8, the second module, the C module, the hard one. And we have to get it going. Let's get to the first conventions question and engage maybe some omega convention. I see that these are verbs. I've got a singular, I've got a singular, I've got a plural, and I've got a singular. Let's bias the odd man out, go looking for a subject. I see, don't go over the little dashy poo here. We've got the many of whom referring is to many, plural to plural. Pick it and move on. Conventions, I see the omega convention desperately wanting to pop for the complete sentence mix-up, but it's not. It's going to be a final four engagement. I'd still think you'd get there if you treated it like the complete sentence mix-up, but the final four, can I use the period here? I do have a complete sentence to the left. Researchers have determined, I have a dependent clause, but I have a complete sentence to the left. Period could work. Then I want to think if the right side exemplifies the left side. In the northern hemisphere, the magnetic field points up into the ground, but in the southern hemisphere, it points up towards the surface. These are an example of why some move in the opposite direction when searching. It exemplifies the left side, so I can pick it. Additionally, there are complete sentences on either side, which helps me kill all of these choices, because the problem would be somewhere. Two complete sentences. The colon can carry that burden here. I'm going to check my omega conventions in this one. I see the complete sentence mix-up. Yes, I see a lonely guy, a space, a lonely coordinating conjunction, the beautiful little colon in C, and then the lonely comma. This one I can engage picking C with some confidence, but I should check to make sure there's a complete sentence on either side. As she's making prices spread throughout your dependent clause, divergent strategies for providing milk emerged. Complete sentence to the left. Then I've got the immediate start of a subordinating conjunctions, whereas these became key. Acid heat coagulation became common. I have a complete sentence on the left, complete sentence on the right, and I don't even have to check to make sure the right side exemplifies the left because I know it's going to be true. Omega conventions. This is going to be a weird one because I see that there are verbs and there's kind of like punctuation, which screams to me this is going to be a forming a clause. Pop for them. I've got a neither, I've got a both, I've got a both, and I've got a plural. I'm going to bias the only one that is disgusting in this, and I'm going to start looking for bridges. When I see a comma in my verbs question, I look for bridges and I read over them. It's tempting to want to stop there, but you have to keep going because a bridge goes from here to here in this question. Underneath this bridge is a list that's providing what's being included. And when I read over the bridge, these extensive changes reflected my verbs here. I can't have two verbs in one clause unless there's a coordinating conjunction. Therefore, this one falls, and this one would be disgustingly separating our subject from our verb. And I move on to the next conventions question. I see another one that's just the exact same. It's like a verbs with like punctuation involved. So I know it's going to pop some sort of neither forming the clause question, but we can do it anyway and find a both, find a neither, find a both. I'm going to bias this guy, go looking to read over bridges. Much admired during his time. Past participle. This bridge is acceptable. English poet and Shakespeare contemporary John Donne's works. Sorry, got to plug that in. Works had another bridgey poo here. Ben, we got a double bridge situation going on here, and I know that I've got my answer. A and D would both make two verbs in one clause without a coordinated conjunction to link them. Verbs that tell me when I'm describing there. And then B would separate the subject from the verb with a long comma, which would be disgusting. Conventions question. Oh my gosh. We got verbs here. Let's hope for an easy one. I've got a plural. I've got a singular. I've got a plural. And I've got a plural. Gorgeous. Let's pick the odd man out. Read over this little bridgey proos. Past this prepositional phrase. The shape is unique. I like the way that looks. And we're on our conventions question. We can't really slow down though. That has been taking a while. Specialized muscle that draw in oxygen, draw in oxygen into it through triggering a chemical reaction where oxygen combines with chemicals to produce a glow. Next, I feel sequencing. Next, when the fire stops drawing in oxygen, the glow ceases. I'm not instantiating anything. They're different things. By contrast seems to be good. Specifically, no. And even though I liked the notion that there was sequence, I'm not just going to throw out a random in conclusion because that's absolutely disgusting. I just have contrast. On one side, I had production of glow, and then on the right side, I had the removal of glow. I'm going to check here. Upon first doing this, I'm going to go for my main clause to give me my information. One might assume a deep hole filled with life-size, classically styled sculptures that open up in the street. Then I'm going to go to my main clause in the second one. Well, when are created merely the illusion depth? I see, even though one might assume a deep hole had opened up, he just created an illusion. I know that I'm living in contrast here. On the contrary, contrast there. I want to emphasize the distance covered by these people. The 62-mile long, this gives me distance, and I like this immediately off the rip. The next one just speaks that it's private. This could be the first that something doesn't tell me about distance. The Philadelphia-Lancaster Turnpike, which connects two cities, was built between. The which connects two cities might be giving me what I'm looking for here. I'm going to see that both of these details are true. It is 62 miles long. It is 62 miles long. I don't see anything long about it being a liar. So when I compare these two, at which one's better at emphasizing the distance? Absolutely. Does giving the distance make that better? This states it's two cities, but what if the cities were close? I don't like that. This one, disgusting for the same reason that B is disgusting. I want to explain an advantage of this thing. What is the advantage? I want to be able to say what I found together that I like. Featured a drawing room. This speaks to details, but it doesn't tell me exactly what the advantage is, so I don't like it. To access video clips, songs, networks, audio. First, this just speaks of a process inside the women. Oh, I like this. What's the advantage? It appealed to audiences, and then if you ask for how, it allowed them to control the experience. That's beautiful. Using an interactive format, theater students at Radford play. Using the interactive format alludes to the advantage. I'm just going to make sure that B is true or C is true. Women to vote, appeal to audiences. Because the format allowed to explain this, this absolutely gives me what I'm looking for. So D is just scratching at the surface of what C hits right over the head. Refute a claim that this word in the sorting favors small urban districts. Okay, we want to refute a claim that it favors small urban districts. Less populated rural districts are disproportionately underrepresented in the sorting, creating an unfair advantage for smaller. But I don't really know what I read there. Maybe it's untrue that malappropriated for the 169 rather the formula distributed. I am recognizing right now that I don't understand. I feel like it's juggling small and large and big and small and urban and rural. So I need to calm down for a moment. Here's the definition of what that word means. It commonly happens in representative government. Sorting is merely their legislature. Seats favor, okay, we can slow down. Seats favor land, okay. Less populated, rural, and then we're going to go large is what it means. So large refers to size, less populated, and we'll glue those words together so we don't get confused. Because I could tell by this question, it was trying to make me juggle a whole bunch of things. So then we've got small, more populated, urban. Those are the facts of the matter. I could just tell that it was making me juggle all these concepts and the stupid word in this legislature. Less populated rural districts, less populated are disproportionately underrepresented? No, it favors them. It's untrue, favors small urban districts. That's true so far, I like it. The formula for distributing seats overrepresents more populated districts. No. The L goes to small, more populated. So the second part of this entailment is wrong. A common feature of representative, this is merely defining what it is. This has to be our right answer. Awarding more points for land than points for residence. That aligns with this bullet point. The formula for the overrepresents large tracts of land, less populated. Exactly. D's my right answer. Whew, that one was tough. I'm going to present the study and its methodology. It's twofold here. I'm very comfortable with methodology. A study reveals that ducklings, which expend, this is just about results, seeking to understand. This is absolutely speaking to the study, presenting the study, and then computer simulations is a beautiful methodology. Study the physics behind the fact. I don't know what this is, but this doesn't have methodology. Then when I read this, I push forward. This seems to be some part of the result. B has to be my answer. I want to emphasize the aim. So why did they want to do it? Aim of the research study. Researchers at Wichita State wanted to know. That gives me some beautiful aim. Thanks to the work done, we now know that's like a result. Wichita State have determined that that seems to be some sort of result. Analyze, this is like methodology, maybe even has a result. That's not what I'm looking for. On to question 1. I see this colon. Thank goodness for this little gift. May structures provide the structure. And then I couldn't help but notice this little complex list here is another semicolon. So I'm going to keep reading things. Squash vines cover, and the beans aid their two sisters. So a whole bunch of things are working together. This seems like a wildly intricate system. I wouldn't want to make a statement about anything else. I've got another colon, which is awesome. They praised thing for creatively transforming. They found truly creatively transforming, which is inventive, is going to be the synonym for that. My signal element is going to be as, fails to account for. It's tenuous at best, right? It's not good. It's a lose a little idea. Then I see my colon here. He is rejecting this thing. He's rejecting. What kind of rejection is he doing? He's not abandoning an old idea. He's just not doing what the media is doing. Function of the underlying sentence in the text as a whole. Let's give it to me. I don't have time. He loved to go to the water's edge, chuck twigs, and watch them sail to J and C and world. And he wanted to follow. Oh, he's a dreamer. He wanted to follow them. All right. I can engage with my sentence first and then or my items first. And if I have to look around, then I'll look around. It provides an extended description of a location. Kind of describes it, but I wouldn't say it's extended, but it's on the table for now. It reveals that some residents of Johnstown are confused by his behavior. I don't have anything within there that speaks to the confusion of them, though it's kind of an odd behavior. It illustrates the uniqueness of, it kind of does, right? He's dreaming of going away with them, but then this statement about being compared to other children, I have nothing in my underlying portion that engages with that. It suggests that John longs to, yes. This final part is this. I didn't like the notion of it being extended description of the location. And when I look around, I see that this is exactly what it means by an extended location, which isn't the underlined portion, therefore trash, trash, trash. How does 2 respond to 1? Let's look at 2 and see what we've got. From this first sentence, we'll build our summary. From the first sentence, we have they, Pinetta, Focarelli, they have argued. What have they argued? The mergers on prices has focused, that argued it focuses just on short-term effects, which show to be bad for consumers. That's okay. Then what does it say? In the second sentence, used in the case of consumers banking in England, they showed that over the long term, several years in the study, over long term, the efficiency of consumers do benefit. Okay. Then I can go into text 1. How would they respond? When mergers, one of the often claim that merger will benefit consumers, and they would say yes, in the long term it does. Keep reading. Economists investigated this notion in the context of the United States newspaper market. She modeled a hypothetical merger of Minneapolis area newspaper and found that subscription prices would rise. Sure. So how would he respond? They would say, sure, they rise, but check back in a month, right? Check back in a month or longer, right? Sure, they would rise. They would grant it. Check back in a month. They would recommend that FAM compare a near-term effect of a merger in the Minneapolis area with the effect of a merger. No, it's not. They wouldn't complain about the market. They're complaining about the time. They would argue that over the long term, I like that, expenses incurred by the merger would also increase. No, they're not saying that the L is both. They're saying that eventually it would do better for the consumer. Things would get better for the consumer, rather. They would encourage FAM to investigate whether the projected effect on persisted. I absolutely love the way that C is looking right now. They would claim that the mergers have a different effect on consumer prices. No, there's no statement about industries. All that they're saying is that, though it's in Italy, their only statement is that look in the long term. C is going to be my answer. How does the word chancellor respond to the crowd? This is going to be based on according to the text. So I'm just going to read it to get a familiarity where the details are. One man who was more excited than the rest flung his hat high into the air and shouted, as well as I can make out, "Hurrah for the subordinate!" Everybody roared, but whether it was for the subordinate or not did not clearly appear. Some were shouting bread and some were shouting taxes, but no one seemed to know what it was that they really wanted. All this was from the open window of the warden's breakfast saloon, looking across the shoulder of the chancellor. What can it all mean? He kept repeating to himself, I've never heard such shouting before, and at this time of the morning, too, and with such unanimity. Right? Okay. He asks about the meaning of the crowd shouting. True. I think he does that. Even though he claims to know what the crowd wants, I don't think I can find a detail to support that. He indicates a desire to speak to the crowd. I don't remember that. Who are we talking about? Lord Chancellor. Shoulder of the Lord Chancellor. We have no idea that he wants to do that. It expresses sympathy for the crowd's demand, even though the crowd's shouting. What can it all mean? I've never heard it. Maybe. He describes the crowd as being united. Yes, true right there. Even though the crowd clearly appears otherwise, but no one seemed to know what they really wanted. Yeah, I don't know if I could find a detail for C or not, but I know that I find both entailments provided in D, so I'm going to pick it and move on. Data in the graph to support Charlton Stevens' claim. Where is their claim? What's my title first? Voters' political orientation, level of political information, and probability of voting. So their claim is here. Let's find this sucker and chunk them out. Let's do one zoom out so that we can see it all. More likely to vote, driven by how well voter knows candidate. I've got a dash, which is going to tell me hopefully what it means. And it says essentially, which means this is going to package it up into something that I can understand a little bit better. The more informed, the more confident they are, the more informed, the more likely to vote. The more informed they are, the more likely they are to vote. I dig it. I feel good about this. Voters' political orientation, the level, what we're saying, the more they know, the more likely they are to vote. The more they know, the more likely they are to go. Okay. At each point on the political orientation scale, high information voters, dark bars, were more likely to vote than low information voters. Yes. And I like this, and this seems to agree with what I'm saying, but I've got time, so I'm going to check the others. Only low information voters who identify as independent had a voting probability below 50%. So that both of those things are true, but I'm trying to prove between these two, I'm trying to prove that the more someone knows, the more likely they are to vote. That independent suck is voting doesn't really support my claim. I don't know how I would get there. The closer that low information voters are to the ends of the political orientation scale, the more they are there. Sure, that's true, but if my claim would be like the more staunch Democrat or Republican, the more likely a person is to vote. But that's not what it's saying. It's just saying the more likely a person is to vote. the more informed they are, the more likely it is to vote. So this isn't giving the comparison that I want. High information, but more likely to identify strong. Yeah, once again, I'm more likely to identify. I don't have the information on the chart for that. Get out of my face. Pick it, move on. We got another table. We were going to support their suggestion with the table. We're estimates of T-Rex's bite force, so we can grab a suggestion. The estimate of the bite force significantly influenced by methodology used to generate that estimate. The study by Mears used body mass scaling. And produced the lowest estimated bite force. That's not true. I think it's the highest one. Yeah, it's the highest. In their study, G and E used tooth bone, and now that's true, to produce an estimate. That's good, but I'm already knowing that that's gross because I want something about bite force influenced by methodology, but we'll move on. The bite force estimates by Bates and Falkenhand and Costandall were similar. True, and it's the same methodology, so that seems to be a good start. While the estimates produced by Mears each differed substantially from the other, and I love B. That supports everything. Let's see. The estimated bite force produced by Costandall exceeded the estimated back force by Bates. Use the same method. I don't even need to check this on the fact to know that this claim, even though both groups use the same method, they're not saying that the methodology sucks. We're saying that bite force is influenced by methodology. This would be a different claim, though I could imagine it in a text. C is going to be the right answer. Don't forget, cross this out. That's trash. What would undermine their hypothesis? All right, let's go looking for the hypothesis. They're going to say that damage to the roots increases sexual reproduction. Reproduction increases diversity, increases health. So we're going to undermine this by showing that no damage. So we're going to say damage in a unhealthy meadow would kind of refute the hypothesis, so we can go look into the items. At some sites in the meadow, eelgrass meadows are found near otter populations that are small otters. I see otters are in A and B. What do otters do? As they're digging for otters damage. So otters damage is unhealthy. So we have otters. So the original claim is that otters make healthy meadows. So we would want otters making unhealthy meadows is kind of what we're looking for. At some studies, otters are found near otter. I don't know how this would undermine it because it's not speaking to the health of the meadows and it's like recent. So I would want some duration. We'll table him. At several sites not included in the study, there are large, well-established sea otter populations, but no eelgrass meadows. No, we're going to take this off the table. There's no claim that, no part of his claim is that otters need them in order to survive. It's merely that if otters are present in a meadow, then they greatly increase the health. So that falls. At several sites not included in the study, eelgrass meadows' health negatively correlates with the length and residency. So the longer and larger otter population hurts the meadow's health. That's absolutely going to be the case. My statement about A not having a statement about health and being recent wouldn't be used to undermine anybody. This absolutely would. At some sites, the health of plants unrelated to eelgrass correlates negative to the size. No, I could imagine that maybe the otters helped one but then bodied the other ones. All of their claims were about eelgrass roots causing that. So we're going to support this person's argument. Let's find their argument. Scholars have argued that some Spanish is undeniable. MA folklore is mainly because ongoing interactions between M and US. All right, let's go into the items and see what we've got here. The folklore that they collected included several songs written in this poem. Originally, no, we want to see ongoing. This late 16th century kind of takes them off the table. Much of the folklore that they collected had similar elements. This shows that it was popular. I don't know if it's ongoing. Maybe. Most of the folklore that they collected was previously unknown. No, I would imagine if it were ongoing, they would know of this folklore. They would be able to find it. Rare, show that it's like farther back than what I think. Most of the folklore that they collected consisted of these things of clearly recent origins. I agree with it. That it's popular. That's all this claim is making. D engages with our time thing. Oh my gosh. We've got another chart supported by data in the chart. Average survival of fruit flies following infection. Whew, sheesh. This is boys. What have we done? All right. squad. We're okay. In conjunction with the observation that PR correlates with DPTA, but not with DPTD, the chart shows post AS. I didn't understand any of that. Average survival rates. We've got a survival rate. Times passing, survival rates going down. I don't know what the key relates to, and nothing in A or B is shooting me over to here, so I have to read more of this text. Before I do it, I do think that this chart is just talking about ASIC, and that PRET was like a different chart. In a study of the evolution of microbial pathogens, okay, that doesn't matter. Researchers assessed the resistance to these two things. Subject included flies by silencing, hugely critical. So DPTA, I'm reading forward to like that respectively. What it means to say type A equals no DPTA. Type, and then it's even like out of order for what you would think. Type AB equals no A or B, and then type B means no DPTB. All right, so I'm going to assume this chart is just about this one, and then we're going to go for it. This one's saying that, supported by the data in the graph, DPTA confers defense against ASIC. So DPTA defends against ASIC. So DPTA is absent in type A. So if it confers defense, that would mean that it would survive. Type A means no, silencing DPTA. Confers defense, no. DPTA conferring defense against it. DPTA, I'm typing on it. DPTA stops death. DPTA was present in B. So this is so tricky. You're like double inverting, but I think I've got A is a liar. DPTA does not confer defense because when it wasn't there in type A, it was just fine. A falls. DPT protects against only one bacterial species, whereas DPTA protects against multiple. I'm just going to consider this claim again. DPT protects multiple. I'll just grant that it worked in the first one. Does it protect against ASIC? No. DPTA does not predict it. I'm just repeating my claim to make sure I still agree with myself. Because in type A, it was silenced. There was no DPTA, and it was just fine. B falls. Only fighting on the second entailment. DPT, maybe. I see that this one talks about A. This is the one I understand the most, so I'm going to look at D. Defense against ASIC is strongest when both DPTA and DPT are present. That's not true. Type A was the strongest. Oh, wait. No, because when DPT are present, we don't have that on the chart. There's no type. In type A, B, they're both silenced. I don't have that on the chart. 12 is just not supported. I don't have that on the chart. DPT, Maves, DPT, yeah, it has to be, because when in A, type A is silenced, B is present, and they're kind of just fine. So it's got to be this one. Pick it and move on. Whew, what a grind. Okay, that's fine. Let's, oh my gosh, together with these findings kicks us back a sentence, and we've got this chunky boy to engage with. That's okay. He complicated this account, so that might kick us back a sentence in a bit. So then not only productivity gains are unremarkable, are small, right? They're small. But that there is a disparity in the UX tax code, disparity in tax code betwixt labor and, between automation and manual labor. There's a disparity. Okay. This colon is going to tell me what that means, which is, I'm not saying I need to be told what it means, but I'll appreciate it. The tax code classifies automation-related technology as a depreciating asset. Classifies automation-related technology as a depreciating asset. And what that means, even though I'm an expert on taxes, I'll take this helpful explanation, meaning that capital expenditures on that technology can reduce the tax firm's burden relative to its tax firm. So it makes it better. So reducing a tax firm burden is good. So that means it's saying the tax code helps it more than if it were labor, is what that's saying. I think that's enough. We can go into it. The explanation that some economists have offered the U.S. firms increasing adoption of automation technology may be based on an overestimation of tax benefits lies. No, there are tax benefits. That's what they're saying. U.S. firms' increasing adoption of automation technology may have driven more by the fact that the government indirectly incentivizes firms to adopt that technology. True, that's what we got in the second part. Than by the ongoing benefits that the technology has for firms' output, which would map onto productivity. I think that maps onto productivity. We'll keep reading. Changes to the U.S. tax that result in capital expenditures on automation technology be treating the same as capital. Okay. This changes that result in capital expenditure being treated the same as the expenditures on labor would likely have little effect. No, this is mingling the categories. I'm sure that this is a separate thing from this, right? That's why that then here is separating the two. This is like mingling the two as if they affect each other. I don't like C. U.S. firms have actually tended to experience a decrease in productivity. No, we don't have a decrease in productivity. It said that it was unremarkable, but that still means that there is a productivity. Oh my God, 5 minutes left. One question. Okay. Whew. So logically complete. What have we got here? What have we got here indeed? Applying genomic knowledge to SK acorn worms, relatives of sea stars, and thus expected, don't want to drop these words, expected to have similar markers for the corresponding, I don't know how to summarize this, I don't know what I'm reading, to the body patterning genes, SK worms, compared to genes of sea stars. They found activity only. Normally I understand what I'm reading by this point, but I don't. Look how much I have to type. Only in the anterior genes in PM's, sorry, the sea stars will do PM's, that's the sea star, PM's entire body. So that seems significant. Only in the anterior genes of PM's entire body and some posterior genes in the edge. I have no idea what I just read. And I know that when I look at the right side, that usually helps, but I just, Despite the greater prevalence of anterior genes in sea stars' genetic makeup, posterior genes active in the body's perimeter are primarily responsible for the star-like. Yeah, I don't know where any of these ideas are coming from. And I see that it's coming up in the next one, so I have to read more. I think I have to read more. I don't know. My reading comprehension is so cooked. Maybe I'm just not smart enough, but this one is a doozy. Okay. Echinoderms. So novelty. Okay. Novelty echinoderms. Hard to compare. That's what it means. Most animals are bilateral. Okay. This is helping. Anterior equals, we'll go ahead, and then posterior equals tail. That's helping with some of the concepts that I saw popping up. Like later what it means, head and tail. I keep reading. Access to the trunk is typical. And typical. Typical symmetry. Then I've got the final sentence, or the middle sentence. Sea stars are mad puzzling yo. They are thought to have come from no head, but, I guess but, and, just like a huge, no head and bilateral. Okay. Here's my summary. Here's what I've got. 90 seconds. It's okay. I noticed in my notes that it's hard to compare. Most are bilateral. Typical anterior is the head, posterior is the tail. Sea stars are mad puzzling. They've come from no head and bilateral. SK worms are expected to have similar compared. They're in their anterior genes, which is like they're all over. Oh, okay. I see something, and I think the conclusion that I'm looking for is that the particularly puzzling thought to have evolved a headless layout, but then when we're mapping it onto worms, we see that they are little tails on their fingers, like their edges, and like mostly head. So they didn't evolve from headless. It's just like they became a giant head. What's happening? Okay. Despite the greater prevalence of anterior genes in sea stars' genetic makeup, posterior genes that distinguishes I don't agree with it. That distinguishes sea star radial symmetry from that of other ones, that's not true. Contrary to the belief that they evolved from early ancestors with bilateral forms of. No, my conclusion is that they did do that from them. That was neither. No, my conclusion is that they did come from bilateral, not this atypical, whatever that's saying, nor radial symmetry. They were bilateral. Their head just became their bodies, and they are now radial. Although two species are closely related, there was only minimal correspondence in the genetic markers for head, tail, trunk regions in the development. No, this has to be false. There is genetic markers similarities. That's how they were able to run this study. This has to be false. When I look to D, rather than ongoing changes resulting in the eventual elimination of the head region in this, as previously assumed, sea stars morphology evolved to complete like a trunk, and that's exactly the right answer. D's the right answer. That's how they pay me the big bucks.